I knew something was wrong the moment a stranger parked a pickup truck on my land and started unloading fencing supplies. At first, I thought he had the wrong address. Then he walked up to me, smiled, and said words I'll never forget. "Hey, I'm glad you're here. I just bought this plot last week. The HOA president said you'd already moved your equipment." I stared at him. "Bought this plot? What plot?" The man pointed toward the lower section of my mountain property, the 5-acre parcel at the foot of the ridge that had belonged to my family for nearly 30 years. And that's when my stomach dropped, because I had never put it up for sale. My name is Daniel Harper. I live in a small mountain community outside Colorado Springs. Unlike most homes in our neighborhood, my property wasn't just a house. It included several acres of land stretching down the mountain. My father bought it decades earlier when land prices were low. When he passed away, the property came to me. The land wasn't worth millions, but it meant everything to my family. I grew up hiking those trails. My kids learned to ride bikes there. Every tree, every fence line, every corner carried memories. Which is why what happened next still feels unbelievable. Our HOA president was a woman named Karen Whitmore. For years, she acted like she owned the entire community. She constantly sent violation notices. She argued with residents over mailbox colors, trash cans, lawn decorations, anything she could control. Most people simply paid the fines because fighting her wasn't worth the stress. I usually stayed out of her way, until she decided to target me. It started when a developer purchased land near our neighborhood. Suddenly, rumors began spreading that additional lots would become extremely valuable. Investors were calling property owners. Real estate agents were knocking on doors. Everyone was talking about land. A few weeks later, Karen approached me after an HOA meeting. "Daniel," she said, smiling, "have you ever considered selling that lower parcel?" I told her no. She asked again. I said no. Then she asked if I'd lease it. Again, no. That should have ended the conversation. It didn't. Over the next several months, she kept bringing it up. Sometimes casually, sometimes aggressively. Each time my answer stayed the same. The land wasn't for sale. Eventually, I stopped thinking about it. Until the stranger showed up. His name was Ryan. And unlike Karen, he seemed genuinely confused. He wasn't trying to scam me. He honestly believed he had purchased the land legally. When I asked who sold it to him, he immediately pulled paperwork from his truck. The seller listed on the documents wasn't me. It wasn't even a member of my family. Instead, the paperwork referenced a property management company associated with the HOA. I felt my pulse rising. None of it made sense. Ryan noticed my reaction. "You didn't sell this?" I shook my head. "No." His face turned pale. "Then I may have a serious problem." We spent the next hour comparing documents. The more I looked at them, the worse things became. The parcel description matched my land almost perfectly. The maps were similar. The boundaries were similar. Everything appeared designed to make a buyer believe the sale was legitimate. But one thing bothered me. A single reference number on the deed looked wrong. I couldn't explain why. I had simply reviewed enough county records over the years to know something felt off. That evening, I drove straight to the county records office website. I searched every document connected to my property. For hours, I sat at my desk reading surveys, deeds, tax filings, and ownership records. Near midnight, I found it. The legal description used in Ryan's paperwork wasn't identical to mine. It had been modified, subtly, just enough to create confusion, just enough to make an unsuspecting buyer think he was purchasing my lower parcel. But the actual county deed still listed me as the owner. Legally, nothing had transferred. At least not yet. The next morning, I contacted a real estate attorney. He reviewed everything. After 20 minutes, he leaned back in his chair and said something that chilled me. "Daniel, this wasn't an accident." I asked what he meant. He pointed directly at the documents. "Someone intentionally built this transaction around a misleading legal description." My stomach tightened. "Can they do that?" "They can try." I asked whether Karen could somehow be involved. The attorney didn't answer immediately. Instead, he asked who had been pressuring me to sell. I told him everything. Every conversation. Every request. Every meeting. When I finished, he became very quiet. Then he asked one final question. "Does the HOA have access to historical property files?" I nodded. Yes, they did. And suddenly a terrible possibility entered my mind. Someone hadn't randomly selected my land. Someone knew exactly which parcel they wanted. The attorney immediately filed notices with the county and advised Ryan to stop all work on the property. For a few days, things remained quiet. Then Karen showed up at my front door. She wasn't smiling anymore. She wasn't acting confident. And the moment I saw the envelope in her hand, I realized she knew we had discovered something. What she said next changed everything. Karen stood on my porch holding a large envelope. For the first time since I had known her, she looked nervous. Not angry, not arrogant. Nervous. That alone told me something was very wrong. "Daniel," she said, forcing a smile. "I think there's been a misunderstanding." A misunderstanding. That was the word she chose after someone had attempted to sell part of my property. I crossed my arms. What kind of misunderstanding? She held out the envelope. Inside was a proposed settlement agreement. According to the document, everyone involved would simply walk away. No lawsuits. No county investigation. No public complaints. No further questions. In exchange, I would receive a payment. Not a large one. Just enough to make the problem disappear quietly. That was the moment I knew this wasn't a mistake. People don't offer settlements when nothing happened. I looked directly at her. "Who authorized the sale, Karen?" Her expression hardened. "You should talk to an attorney." I already did. For a second, her face changed. She hadn't expected that answer. Then she turned around and left. The entire conversation lasted less than 5 minutes. But it told me everything I needed to know. Someone was scared. And it wasn't me. Over the next week, my attorney began requesting records. Emails. Meeting minutes. Property files. Internal HOA communications. Anything connected to the transaction. The HOA's attorney initially resisted. Then something unexpected happened. A former HOA board member contacted us. His name was Michael Reed. He had resigned months earlier after disagreements with Karen. At first, he refused to get involved. But after hearing what had happened, he agreed to meet. We sat together at a small coffee shop. Michael looked exhausted, like someone who had been carrying a secret for a long time. Then he said something that shocked me. "Your land wasn't the first property discussed." I stared at him. "What?" He nodded. "There were meetings." "What kind of meetings?" He lowered his voice. Karen believed several landowners weren't using their property efficiently. I almost laughed. Efficiently? It wasn't her property. It wasn't the HOA's property. It belonged to individual homeowners. Michael continued. According to him, Karen had spent over a year talking with developers and investors. She was obsessed with increasing property values. Obsessed. She believed new development would bring money into the neighborhood. But several key parcels, including mine, stood in the way. Most owners had refused to sell, so she kept looking for alternatives. The more Michael talked, the worse it became. Apparently, Karen had convinced a few people that she had authority she never actually possessed. She presented herself as the gatekeeper of the community, someone who could help facilitate transactions. Most people never questioned her claims. Until now. Meanwhile, Ryan, the buyer, was having problems of his own. His title company had started reviewing the paperwork, and they found discrepancies. Lots of discrepancies. Missing approvals. Conflicting parcel descriptions. Incomplete ownership verification. Every new review uncovered another issue. The transaction was collapsing. Fast. Then came the biggest discovery. My attorney called me one afternoon. His voice sounded different. Almost excited. "Daniel, I think we found it." "Found what?" "The deed." I immediately drove to his office. He placed 2 documents side by side. At first, they looked nearly identical. Same parcel references. Same property history. Same county formatting. But then he pointed to a section near the bottom. A legal attachment. One small page. Easy to overlook. Almost invisible unless someone read everything. The attachment clearly stated that the lower parcel could not be separated from the primary property without specific county approval and owner authorization. Neither requirement had been met. Karen's entire plan depended on one assumption, that nobody would read that page. She never checked the deed, exactly as my attorney suspected from the beginning. And now we had proof. Within days, the county launched a formal review. Ryan fully cooperated. So did several former board members. Records were requested. Statements were collected. Meetings were examined. The pressure intensified. Then the resignation letter arrived. Karen announced she was stepping down as HOA president for personal reasons. Nobody believed it. Not even her supporters. People were asking too many questions. Residents who had once defended her suddenly wanted answers. The community that had feared her for years was finally speaking openly. And the stories started pouring out. Questionable fines. Aggressive enforcement. Unauthorized decisions. Threats. Intimidation. For the first time, people compared notes, and the pattern became impossible to ignore. Several months later, the county completed its findings. The sale was declared invalid. My ownership remained intact. Ryan recovered his money through legal channels. The transaction was officially reversed. The lower parcel never left my name. Not for a single day. Legally, it had always belonged to me. The only thing that changed was the truth finally coming out. As for Karen, she disappeared from community leadership completely. I rarely hear about her anymore. Most residents prefer it that way. They spent years dealing with drama and conflict. Now they just want peace. Honestly, so do I. A few weeks ago, I walked down to the same section of land near the base of the mountain. The sun was setting behind the ridge. The trees were moving in the wind. Everything looked exactly as it had before. Quiet. Unchanged. For a moment, I thought about how close I had come to losing it. Not because I sold it. Not because I wanted to. But because someone believed rules didn't apply to them. Someone thought confidence could replace ownership. Someone thought nobody would check the documents. They were wrong. Because in the end, one overlooked page in a deed destroyed an entire scheme. And every time I walk that trail now, I'm reminded of a simple lesson. Never underestimate the power of reading the paperwork everyone else ignores.